Is there anything that you feel like you might be able to drop on us right now?
So this is the poem. This is not a poem. This is not a poem, and I am not a poet. When I'm unable to find a better way of saying in 2012, 48 people in Great Britain were killed by guns and 120 women killed by the hands of their beloved partners. I am not a poet, but I can't find a more beautiful way to say that no nation in the world imprisons as many members of its population as America does. The more black men in the US are incarcerated today than what they were during the peak of South Africa's apartheid. No, I am not a poet. When I can't find clever words to illustrate the fact that before 2008, Nelson Mandela had been on America's list of most dangerous terrorists for over 60 years, that Cameron is a liar, that Cameron was a key member of the Federation of Conservative Students in '89, and I hope to hang Mandela. Forgive me, because today I am not a poet and this is not a poem. When eloquent words fail me and I can't capture the struggle of the poor through the metaphysics of language, that by the time Margaret Thatcher left office in 1990, the annual incomes of the richest 0.01% of British society had climbed to 70 times the national mean. And I don't know how I feel about the fact that key policy makers and leading civil servants have never had a job outside of their politics. The same men who set the minimum wage, with only 4% ever having worked in manual trades, of which 68% went to private schools. That is why this is not a poem, and I am not a poet. Because everything I've ever written suffers the weight of its own futility when another mother comes to a workshop with a fresh black eye, when there's another empty seat in the place that James sat in last week, and when I ask the group where he is, their young eyes open wet, as if his coffin in that moment was being lowered into them. But you see, I can understand all this more when they cut funding to schemes that aimed at inspiring people previously inspired by crime and the insufferable dross of mainstream culture, private prison systems and prisons for profit, when young women are given more options than just be someone's girl, be someone's mother, be someone's silence. But you see, I've done it again. I've crossed themes. I've not followed traditional poetic form, and so I'm a terrible poet, because how do I speak words in prison, then tell a young black person that they were once kings and queens of lands whose names fall dead on their tongue? How do I return their history? How do I mention the Mari excavation, Shikanta Diop, and the skin cell sampling of 300 mummies? How do I show them pictures of skyscrapers before skyscrapers even existed? How do I do all this and then have them ask what part of the world I am from? Why don't write poetry about 1974, Elgar and Kissinger, until I tell them that I am not a poet, and nothing I can write will help dismantle this idea of race that we've become so attached to. Nothing I can write will include the importance of mitochondrial DNA and the 99.99% of us that is identical, that a BNP member most probably has more Asian and Arab in them than the mosque that they conspire to blow up, that immigration isn't a choice, that people don't come to the UK for great weather, hospitality and quality of life. How do I explain all this and still retain artistic merit? I spent days looking for a metaphor to put the Palestinian Nakba in, until I found a home that once stood beautiful and prim, and then I opened the door and saw its contents ransacked, its family massacred, and its garden on fire. From that day, I abandoned any hope of metaphor and accepted that I could not write poetry about this, that everything I tried to imagine had already slit its own stomach, like the afternoon I spent with a woman who had been raped, and asked her to capture it in verse, asked her to use simile and alliteration, until she looked at me and said, I don't know what those things mean, but I can tell you in a few simple words what it feels like to live with the Satan of your own heart. Poetry isn't for me. It's for people who can use words like odoriferous while putting red wine to the lips of their white skin, and applaud the technical endeavour of a poem, its wit, its ingenuity, its metre and form, not its helping, not the ambulance siren that screeches from the height of its title. That is why this is not a poem, and I am not a poet, because I cried reading Douglas Dunn, Aaron Kalaka, Borges and Neruda. I cried when I went looking for female poets and found few. I cried when asked how many black poets Penguin had ever published and was told two, when my English teacher told me that language wasn't my strength, that my anger crushed my intelligence, that I should think about going and learning a trade. And I cried then too when I spoke to a group of young men about what it was to be a man, how we inherit this cancerous culture, how we inherit misogyny, objectification and the glory of violence while silently suppressing the sensual. These were all the hardest things to write about, to talk about and to live with. That is why I keep saying that this is not a poem and I am not a poet. because all of the above digress and ignore the rules set by the establishment. But all that doesn't matter, because it's done now. You've come this far in listening. Endings are always the hardest things to write, because the author knows that's the last impression the reader will be left with. And so I chose the following wisely. We are made up of all the things that broke us just to keep us alive. Maybe I could have said just that, but I didn't. Because like I said, this is not a poem, and I am not a poet.
Anthony Amaxagoro, that was absolutely beautiful.
Thanks very much, man.
Thank you, sir, very much, sir. As we say on London Wheel, it's about the journey. I wish you well in yours, and thanks so much for your time and your wisdom.
Thank you very much.
All right, be well.
Thank you.